Imagine yourself as you are now, but you're far and away the best at everything you do in life. Now imagine your life taking a complete 180, you're in a completely new world and you're one of the worst at everything you do. This is exactly how Yuji Itadori's life went as he was thrust headfirst into the Jujutsu world. Join me as we cover how Yuji has become the unlikely hero that will save the entire Jujutsu society. So, like I said, Yuji started from the top. This man was nicknamed the Tiger of West Junior High because he had so much strength and stamina on the sports fields. He was far and away the best athlete around, but he chose to be a nerd and join the occult club, and that led to him swallowing a finger. This finger changed his entire life. Now quickly before we get into why that finger changed his life, we gotta talk about Yuji's smile. Everything he does in life, he does with a smile. Having no family except for his grandpa who died basically completely alone, he developed a life philosophy. This philosophy was that he's going to help people throughout the entirety of his life so that he doesn't die alone like his grandpa. He does this with a smile, and he continues to do this until life forces him to do otherwise. Now, as soon as Yuji ate the first of Sukuna's fingers, he was instantly condemned. He would be executed, but whether it was now or later was completely up to him. He made the choice to spend his life collecting all of Sukuna's fingers, and then at the end of that, he would be executed. Life as a Jujutsu sorcerer was completely new for Yuji, and to be honest, he was kinda terrible at it. Despite being a once-in-a-millennia vessel for Sukuna, he didn't have any inherent technique of his own, and he really still doesn't to this day. Anyway, Yuji begins his journey as a Jujutsu sorcerer by sticking it to his principle. When Masamichi warns Yuji that no Jujutsu sorcerer dies without regrets, he drops a really hard line. He says that he can't say what he'll be thinking when he dies, but he can say that he will never regret the way that he lives. This is an eye-opening line for not only those in the Jujutsu world, but also those of us here in real life. I think we should all strive to make the most of every day we're blessed with here on this earth, and we should live like Yuji. Wow, I kind of sound like a motivational speaker out here. Anyway, Yuji couldn't even use cursed energy to begin with, so he takes on the finger bearer with a cursed object. He fails, Sukuna takes over his body and tries to kill Megami, and then Yuji dies. Now, some funny business goes on, and Yuji comes back to life. This funny business is extremely important to the plot later on though, so we're going to talk about that. Sukuna agrees to bring Yuji's body back from death upon two conditions. Number one, Sukuna gets to take complete control of Yuji's body for 60 seconds when he chants the word enchain. In this minute, he can't kill or hurt anybody as according to a binding vow he made. Now, binding vows are basically pacts made with one another or oneself in order to gain something in exchange for something else. Serious punishment via the cursed energy that it was made with is dealt to anyone who breaks a binding vow. If you like Hunter x Hunter, it's kind of like a nin contract, kind of like what Kurapika had with his chains. Anyway, the second condition is that Yuji has to forget that this exchange ever happened, so he doesn't know that Sukuna could just take over his body at any point. He accepts these terms and he gets another shot at life. Gojo begins teaching him how to use cursed energy, and since he was already such a freak athlete to begin with, he kind of catches on to the 1-2 no jutsu pretty quick. He also learns about domain expansions when Gojo brings him along whenever he fights Jogo. Gojo easily beats this dude, which in hindsight shows us the extreme power gap between Gojo and literally anyone we've seen up to this point. At the time of this recording in the anime, Jogo just completely mopped the floor with Maki and Naobito Zenin and with Nanami, not even breaking a sweat. I mean, it's crazy. Nanami and Naobito are both at the very top of grade 1 sorcerers, so the power gap between somebody like Gojo and grade 1 sorcerers even is incredible. So basically what I'm trying to get across through talking about all this stuff is that Yuji learned about domain expansions in a battle between two of the strongest ones that we've seen to date. After this little training arc, Yuji is introduced to Nanami and Junpei. The Junpei arc is tragic. Mahito uses Junpei as a pawn to get to Yuji. The poor boy's whole life was ruined. His mom was murdered, he was led to believe that Mahito would lead him to the path of power, and right whenever he was about to join Yuji, who was the one person who still showed him kindness, he was transfigured in front of Yuji. This moment was the beginning of the end for Yuji's smile. Mahito is the ultimate foil for Yuji's character, and it shows. Yuji loses his smile, proclaiming that he will kill Mahito. Yuji and Nanami fight the spirit for a little while, and Yuji uses his divergent fist attack on Mahito, and it actually damages him to the point where he has to retreat. Yuji and Nanami now have a heart-to-heart about death and the true nature of life and death and killing and all this, and we see that the world and this experience in general has really taken a toll on Yuji. It opened him up to the true nature of the Jujutsu world world, which is much darker than we ever even imagined. Yuji makes a promise to himself. Until he knows what it means to die naturally and he has the ability to kill Mahito, he won't lose to anybody or anything. These are some more powerful words from Yuji that fans seem to forget about. I mean, Yuji's such an underrated character in his own show that it just blows my mind. After all this goes down, he finally meets back up with Megumi and Nobara, who have thought he's been dead this entire time because he did kind of die in front of them. Anyway, they all proceed on to the Goodwill event where Yuji meets his besto friendo, Todo. This dude plays a huge role in training Yuji's mind and his cursed energy. The rest of the Kyoto High students are actively trying to kill Yuji during this whole event, but anyway, him and Todo have their own all-out brawl. Todo actually teaches Yuji how to control the flow of his cursed energy in this fight. As we know, during this, they're interrupted by the coalition of cursed spirits and cursed users. Hanami faces off against these two, but Todo steps back and makes Yuji fight her one-on-one so that he can master the Black Flash technique. This attack has 2.5 times the strength of a normal attack, and it boosts the user's power to 120% for a while after that. Now this fight goes on until Gojo shows up, and then that's that. Yuji's next important moment is when he's forced to fight the Curse Wound Death Paintings Kechizu and Eso. He and Nobara are forced to tag team these two, and they end up killing them both. Killing them bothers him to his core though. They weren't just cursed spirits. Like the transfigured humans that he'd been forced to kill earlier on because of Mahito, these were flesh and blood beings. Eso literally cried about the death of his brother Kechizu before Yuji killed him too. We see the death of these two play a large role in Yuji's story later on when it comes to their older brother Choso, so keep that in mind. The Shibuya incident is when things start to really get tough for our unexpected hero. Now remember, he's still not that strong, and Shibuya is absolutely full of special grade spirits. We can guess that he's roughly the power level of a grade 1 sorcerer since he's up for promotion to this rank. Now, when news hits Yuji that his mentor and just safety net Gojo has been sealed away, he takes it on the chin and he gets ready to fight. He groups up with several other sorcerers to devise a plan, and sadly this is the last time that he'll see some of them alive. Yuji and Megumi team up to beat a cursed user, and then Yuji heads toward the center where he runs into Choso. If you remember, Yuji recently killed Choso's younger brother, so Choso has an absolute hatred and desire to kill him. Their fight begins, and Choso completely overpowers Yuji and incapacitates him with a shot to the liver. Before he's able to kill him though, Choso has fake memory flashbacks to when Yuji was a child and he was his younger brother, and it's just some really weird stuff, but anyway, he lets Yuji live. Now we're about to get into manga spoiler territory, so if you need to head out, go on, but remember to hit that sub button so that you can come back next time. Now, we later learn that Choso has these flashbacks due to his ability called Blood Connection, which allows him to see the impending deaths of his brothers. He had this for Kechizu and Eso before, and now he's having this for Yuji, so does that mean that they're actually brothers? We'll cover that shortly. Anyway, now Jogo feeds Yuji's incapacitated body 10 fingers of Sukuna, and Sukuna is freed. He takes over Yuji's body and rampages, killing a lot of people and squaring up with Megumi and subsequently Maharaga, who's going to play a massive role later on. Then, Yuji finally gains control back. He's absolutely dismayed by all the carnage and all the damage done, and the first thing that he sees is probably the worst thing that he could possibly see. Remember earlier when I said Jogo absolutely toasted Nanami? Well, he did, but Nanami lived. He was totally burned up and about to die, but he decided he was going to fight Mahito anyway. Yuji approaches just as Mahito explodes Nanami's torso, which instantly kills him. Before he dies, he tells Yuji that he's got it from here, so he really does have faith in the next generation and in Yuji specifically. Now, Yuji already hated Mahito, but this really sealed the deal. This fight is absolutely nuts with hands flying everywhere. During this fight, Mahito sends a double out, and this double goes and fights Nobara. She does real damage to Mahito now because her resonance technique allows her to attack Mahito's double, and that damage reflects back onto Mahito's real body. Mahito leads Nobara back to where Yuji and the real Mahito were fighting, and since she had her guard down since she's been fighting the double that can't use Mahito's curse technique, Mahito slips his hand onto her face. He uses his technique to blow up her face, even blowing her eye out of socket, and she's left for dead. Now whether she's actually dead or not is still up in the air to this day, but the effect that it has on Yuji is just the same as if she was. He's completely out of it now. One of his mentors is sealed, the other dead. His teammate is basically dead. The poor guy's just done. His smile is gone and he isn't even fighting anymore. Mahito rants on about how he and Yuji are two sides of the same coin, one killing without hesitation and one saving people without hesitation, just the same. Yuji stays in this haze until his best friend Toto shows up to save the day. Even then though, Yuji's out of it. He says that he's just watched Nanami and Nobara die and he's done nothing but kill people himself. He just can't forgive himself. Toto protects him during this meltdown until Arata Nita shows up and tells Yuji that he stopped his wounds from progressing any worse. He tells Yuji that he's done the same for Nobara, and this lifts Yuji's spirits enough for him to join the fight again. Yuji wakes up and he and Toto take on Mahito, and it actually goes pretty well until Mahito decides to use his domain expansion on them. Toto loses an arm in the exchange, and this prevents his curse technique Boogie Woogie from ever working again. And then somehow Mahito powers up even more. Yuji and he battle it out, but Yuji somehow powers up more too, and he actually wins this fight against Mahito. As he prepares to deal the final blow, the exorcising blow against his rival, Mahito, Pseudo Geto, or the being known as Kenjaku, shows up. Instead of saving his boy Mahito, who's been working under him this entire time, Kenjaku absorbs him like he would any other curse, which pretty much ends Yuji's chances of ever getting to kill his rival. Well, he didn't actually absorb him because he only absorbed his curse technique. It's kind of weird how that works with special grade sorcerers, but anyway. Now a huge fight breaks out between Kenjaku and Yuji and the Kyoto High students, and then out of nowhere, Choso shows back up. Upon his arrival, he announces that Kenjaku, that guy standing before them now, was the thing that was possessing Noritoshi Kamo and was responsible for the creation of the Cursed Wound Death Paintings. This is crazy because at the same time, he also says that Yuji is his little brother, and we just don't have all the pieces of this puzzle yet. Yuji's still confused as to how Choso thinks that they're actually brothers, but anyway, he's glad to have him on his side. It's important to note Choso's observation of Yuji here. He says that Yuji was already extremely strong and powerful, but he didn't really have any control over his cursed energy. Throughout Shibuya, he gained fluid control of this cursed energy, and now he's known as a demon god. Well, he's not known as that, but Choso calls him that, so it's pretty cool. Now Choso finally confronts Yuji about their shared parentage. He asks Yuji if his father had stitches on his forehead like we know Noritoshi Kamo and this pseudo Geto guy to have, but they get interrupted before Yuji can talk about it by Naoya Zenin, who's come to kill Megami. This fight too gets interrupted, but this time it's by Yuta Akatsu, who has been appointed to kill Yuji. We know from JJK 0 that Yuta can absolutely demolish Yuji. Well, we don't necessarily know that specifically, but we do know that Yuta destroyed Geto, and Geto was pretty much second only to Gojo in power up to that point. So we can infer. Yuji runs from him, but Yuta's speed is so bolstered by cursed energy that he actually can't get away, and Yuji's fast. After a few exchanges, Yuta's partner cursed spirit Rika immobilizes Yuji, and Yuta uses this opportunity to stab Yuji and kill him. I mean, literally kill him. Now we randomly see a flashback of Yuji's parents. We see his father, Jin Itadori, and we see his mother, Kaori Itadori, who has stitches across her forehead. From this, we know that Yuji's mom was possessed by Kenjaku. Choso's dad and Yuji's mom are both Kenjaku, who's the main villain of the story. How this will play out later, I really don't know, but it does explain Yuji's inherent strength and speed and all that, and how he's able to be a vessel for Sukuna. He was probably created just for that by Kenjaku. I definitely feel like Kenjaku has some more plans for Yuji later on, but I guess we'll find out later. Anyway, after having Naoya report to the higher-ups that Yuji is dead, Yuta brings him back from the dead with his reverse curse technique. Gojo previously tasked Yuta with taking care of his students in case something happened to them, and he really did what he had to do. Yuta literally had a binding vow with Jujutsu headquarters saying that he would kill Yuji, so he really did have to kill Yuji. Yuji died again for a second time. Now Megami shows up and Yuji freaks out again. He tells Megami that he killed lots of people. Megami stops him saying that it was all their faults and Yuji can't bear this whole burden alone. He informs Yuji of the culling game and our heroes set off on their new journey. They must stop Kenjaku and unseal Gojo now. Yuji also tells Yuta to straight up kill him if Sukuna ever took over his body again, so that really does tell us some of our boy's character. I mean, he really does care about this. After a meeting with Master Tengen to discuss the culling game and unsealing Gojo and all of that, Yuji heads out to recruit Kenji Hikari to their cause. In Hikari's underground fight club, Yuji faces Panda in an unscripted battle and absolutely whoops him. Upon meeting Hikari, Yuji makes him mad because he's from Jujutsu High and Hikari hates everything to do with Jujutsu High, so he pretty much starts pummeling him. Yuji decides not to fight back and this gains Hikari's respect. It's kind of like Bellamy versus Luffy, except Hikari's actually a good guy unlike Bellamy, but anyway. Yuji gives Hikari a philosophical statement that I want to mention before we move on. He says that he's just a cog in the machine that Jujutsu sorcerers need to defeat cursed spirits. So basically, despite being the vessel for Sukuna and the son of Kenjaku, Kenjaku, he sees himself as nothing more than a role player. It's such a crazy take to me. Anyway, Hikari joins them and they all go off to join the culling game. Yuji and Megumi enter Tokyo Colony 1 and they're instantly split up and attacked. Yuji eventually meets up with Hiromi Higuruma, who's an awakened sorcerer who's been fighting wrongdoers in the game. They fight as Yuji needs to use Higuruma's 100 points to add a rule to the game, and we get to see Yuji 1v1 a domain expansion, without one of his own obviously. Higuruma's domain isn't normal though. It forces non-violence. The whole domain is basically a criminal trial and Yuji is convicted for something pretty dumb. Yuji's cursed energy is confiscated as a result of this trial, so he has to fight Higuruma without cursed energy. Higuruma activates his domain expansion again because of a retrial that Yuji asked for, and this time Yuji is convicted for mass murder in Shibuya and he's sentenced to death. Because Higuruma knows that Sukuna was responsible for everything that happened in Shibuya, he changes his mind about Yuji and decides he would talk to him. Yuji restores some of his faith in humanity and he decides to help him. Later on, the crew finds Angel, who can unseal Gojo because of her cursed technique, and Megumi's sister, who's been trapped in the game. Turns out she's been possessed by a reincarnated sorcerer and Megumi freaks out. At this very moment that Megumi freaks out, Sukuna uses his pact with Yuji to chant in chain and take over his body. He can't hurt anyone, but he rips off Yuji's own finger and he feeds this to Megumi. As a result of this, his entire essence transfers from Yuji's body to Megumi's body. Now, Yuji and Maki try to fight Sukuna, but they're no match for him. He gets away, and after a little bit of Kenjaku magic, the culling game subsequently ends. Now the crew unseals Gojo, and his fight with Sukuna begins after like a month or so. We know how this inevitably ends though. Sukuna utilizes the power of Maharaga that we talked about earlier playing a huge role in Shibuya, and Gojo loses and dies. Humanity's hope and outlook does not look too good now, but who do you think we see fight him next? Well, none other than our hero Yuji. Wait, no, actually Kashimo Hajime has his 5 minutes of fame until he gets off-screened. Then, our boy Yuji and Higuruma jump at Sukuna, ready to face off. My prediction is that Higuruma will cast his domain, and upon being convicted of whatever it is that he's going to be convicted of, Sukuna is going to have his cursed techniques confiscated. As this happens, Yuji's going to take him on in a fist fight, and he actually stands a chance in a fist fight, I think. He may pull off something that even Gojo couldn't. He might beat Sukuna. But what do I know? I just studied Jujutsu Kaisen like it was my college major. Let me know your predictions for Yuji and how this plays out coming up. Now you obviously know everything there is to know about our unlikely hero Yuji, but I would argue that the most important character up to this point in the entire Jujutsu Kaisen story is Gojo. So check out this video linked on screen about him and his life now. Please leave a like and more importantly subscribe for more, and until next time, peace.